So I think we'll kick off. So it's 1 minute past midday here in South Africa. This is the final episode in our 6-part series where we're trying to just change the narrative a little bit about what's going on, certainly in our sector, which is fintech and payments. And I'm delighted to be joined by George. George is, I'm going to let him introduce himself a lot more eloquently than I will. But George and I have known each other probably just over a year, maybe a little bit longer actually. We first met at the European Women in Payment Network. Despite our appearance, we were both there. And George gave a phenomenal sort of session and workshop on resilience and just on mind and body and sort of thinking forward and being able to take yourselves out of certain situations, think, and then adjusts, and really resonated with me. So George has been training me, and believe me, if he can train me, he can train anyone. So I'm probably for the last time you're going to hear my voice until right at the end. I'm going to hand over to George. I'm going to mute myself. If you've got any questions, please feel free to add them to the chat or to the question box, and we'll get through to those as soon as we can. So George, I'm going to mute myself, and it's over to you, sir.
Nice one. Thank you, Darren. And yeah, that was the EWPN, which was in June. So it's not quite a year ago. And actually, a lot of the stuff that I talked about in my session at that conference, I'm going to be touching on today. I mean, resilience, mindset, well-being, they're always important. They're always relevant. But I just think kind of now more than ever, certainly I've found that I've been having to draw on all of my own resources. All of the things that I talk about have become ultra important for me to manage my own mental health, my own energy levels, and obviously try and make sense of the changes and create some certainty in all of the chaos and the uncertainty that we have. Now, so today's session, really, I want to keep it as relaxed as possible, and it's about resilience. And we've kind of built it as cultivating a culture of resilience. So this isn't just about you, those of you who are listening, and if you're a leader, if you have a team, if you have people who report into you, or you have some influence in the people around you, whether that's in your business life or your personal life, then really this is going to be important for well beyond just you. And I really do hope that you get some personal benefit from some of the ideas that we share in the next hour or so. But really this is designed to be a way to cultivate, and cultivate doesn't just mean then that you're going to be saying, well, snap your fingers, do these things, and then everything's done. It's like brushing your teeth. You can't just brush your teeth once and then expect to have wonderful, shiny white teeth. It has to be done over a period of time. It has to be done consistently. So what we're really going to be looking at are a number of kind of very simple habits and things to be aware of that need to be done on a consistent and regular basis. And Darren, certainly these are many of the things that we've talked about a lot of over the course of the last 12 months that we've been coaching together. The great thing is that you don't have to be amazing at doing these things to begin with, and you don't have to have any expectations as to what sort of results you're going to get straight away, because it doesn't work like that. But you do them, and over a period of time, all of a sudden you wake up one day, it's like, flipping heck, I'm actually doing all right here. And you realize that change has taken place. But what I also want to do is I want to make sure that this is of the kind of the utmost value to those of you who are listening, especially those of you who have taken the time out of your day to tune in live. So I just kind of want to throw it back to you just for a second, and you can sort of write in the chat or in the Q&A there, just kind of what are some of the things that you're really hoping to get out of today's session. What would be of the most amount of value to you if you could walk away at the end of at 1 o'clock your time? What would be the best takeaway for you to have? Is it to have to feel motivated and inspired? Is it to have some tools? Is it to kind of feel a certain way? What is it that you most want to feel, and what is it you most want to know by the end? You know, I'm not going to lie, I've got a presentation that I'm going to give you anyway, but I want to make sure that I can bespoke it and ensure I can answer the questions that you've got as we go through it. So if you've got anything at all, then just pop it in the chat. If anything pops into your mind as we go through it, then again, just write in the chat. And I'll be asking you a few questions as we go through as well. So I want to keep it a little bit interactive if that's possible. Now, resilience is your ability to manage and not just manage, but to bounce back positively from stress, from adversity, from setbacks. So this isn't just about how do you manage stress. You know, that's one of the big things that I talk about, but this is about more than that. How do you positively grow from it? And certainly this has been my experience that, you know, I've, having processed a lot of what's been happening and the changes that I've had to make practically and to my business as well, I'm without doubt a stronger, more robust, more resilient individual because of that, not in spite of it. So this really does give us the situation that we're in at the moment, however hard and uncomfortable it may feel. It really is the raw material, the resistance against which we push, that's going to enable us to grow. And I really want you to keep that in mind as we go through the session today. I want to kind of frame things up around mental health as well, because mental health is something that we all have. And it's been fantastic as a coach to hear so much additional chatter and kind of the spotlight of attention has been shone very, very brightly on mental health and the importance of talking about it and, you know, not stigmatizing it over the last few years, but in particular in the last couple of months, it's had huge attention. And the challenges that we're facing around the lockdown, the isolation, the uncertainty about the future, all the changes, you know, whether it's globally on a macro level or personally to us, the changes that we've experienced financially, you know, through our businesses and so on. Our mental health is going to be affected by that. Absolutely no question. And it's going to go up and down this continuum on a daily basis, on an hourly basis. And I can absolutely, I'm living example of that. So I know that this is the case, because some days I'll wake up and I'm feeling really motivated and positive, and then at points through the day, I'll notice that my sort of anxiety will creep up and I'll be feeling a little bit more cautious and worried and doubtful and fearful. And I've got tools and techniques in place that when I notice that, when I feel that stress and overwhelm building, then I'll take action to bring myself back up again. And what's interesting is that with this continuum that goes right from one end, if you imagine having sort of mental ill health down at this end, what psychology has done for the longest period of time has been to take people with diagnosed conditions of chronic anxiety, depression, traumatic disorders like PTSD and so on, and perform interventions that bring them up to this central point, which is also known as languishing. Not particularly inspiring name. Who has aspirations to languish, but it takes away the mental ill health. But what positive psychology has done, this new branch of psychology in the last 20, 30 years, has been to say, well, what if we take some of the same interventions, or maybe come up with some new interventions and apply them to people who don't have mental ill health, who are here, it's maybe bobbling around at this lower end, and move them from languishing right up to this top end here of sort of thriving or flourishing. And actually a lot of the work there was done by this guy here. This is a great book if you're interested in finding out more about positive psychology. Martin Seligman. Authentic Happiness was the kind of the original book, and then Flourish, this book here, it is pretty much the go-to reference for the inception of and the development of positive psychology. So we're going to be drawing on some of these ideas, and no doubt you'll have heard of some of them anyway in common parlance because they've become so popularized. But I want to give you some specifics today that help you understand how do you actually take the theory and put it into reality. How do you actually practice some of these things? What are the tools and strategies? So one of the things I shared when I was at EWPN last year is this idea of our, instead of just managing time, managing our energy. And that's not just physical energy, but it's our sort of mental energy, it's our emotional energy, it's our spiritual energy, if you will. And hopefully you can see there on the kind of the background there. So we've got these two axes. At the top to bottom, we've got high to low. So if you imagine kind of a high level of energy, really kind of buzzing and just getting things done. And then you got this low level of energy. And I'm sure we've all experienced low levels of energy and hopefully some high as well. Then we've also got this x-axis of positive to negative. And some energy can be really positive and, you know, we could be buzzing and doing things and doing the good work. And that actually is where we find ourselves in this high performance zone. So this is where we want to be most of the time. Like very high, very positive energy. This is the good place where we want to be. But we can also be in the negative and high energy state. And that's kind of, we don't want to be there so much, right? This is where we're in the stress, the overwhelm. So we're still getting things done. We're still pushing. But now we're starting to feel it. And I know that you've experienced this. You know, I've never met a high performer. I've never met somebody who's ambitious, who certainly who is in a position of responsibility, works in a high pressure environment, who hasn't experienced pushing too much or pushing to that level where it's a little less pleasant. And you feel it and you experience it as stress, whether that's a physical sensation, mentally, maybe you're not able to concentrate as well. Maybe you don't come up with the same quality of ideas and your creativity starts to suffer. Maybe you find it difficult to collaborate or to have conversations with other people, and that has an impact on your performance as well. And if we stay there too long, then we start to feel this sense of overwhelm and foreboding, and everything feels like it's just crushing down on us. Now, if we don't heed the signals there, then what happens is eventually, and this is generally speaking a long-term thing, because normally we take kind of breaks and we pull ourselves back, but we can be chronically ensconced in this stress overwhelm quadrant of this energy matrix. But if we don't pay attention for a long enough period of time, then eventually we end up moving down to here, which is, you know, we totally don't want to be here. And you may have experienced this yourself personally, and I hope that's not the case, but you may also know people who have. I know certainly in fintech, you know, in such a fast-paced, pressured, target numbers driven industry, it's not uncommon to have people, you know, in your peer group, in your colleagues, or maybe yourself personally, who have experienced burnout. And this is now something that's been recognized by the medical profession. It's not just a wishy-washy, oh, I'm just feeling a bit burnt out. It's something you can be diagnosed with, and certainly it's something that where you're taken out of the equation, you're taken off the table. Right, it's like you can't play anymore. You have to take yourself out because you have no more have a choice. Mental health is really, really disrupted there, and you're unable to function. So we don't want to get here. As I said, most of us will get to stress overwhelm or will take some kind of action. But just to be aware, if you keep pushing, you move from this very high positive, the high performance, you move across the stress and overwhelm, high levels but quite negative energy, and eventually you go to the negative energy and very low levels as well, because it's kind of real mental health disorder territory. So what do we do to combat that? Well, we've got one quadrant left, and that's where we want to be spending some of our time. This is strategic recovery. In fact, I think, Darren, my session at EWPN was entitled Strategic Recovery for Sustainable High Performance, which is still my favorite title for a presentation ever, because it just sounds awesome. But essentially what we're going to be talking about here are what are some of the things we can do to ensure that we oscillate between strategic recovery and high performance, maybe kind of just paying attention to those times where we do shift across to stress and overwhelm, but we're not dwelling there. We're not spending too much time there. We're checking in with our mental health on a regular basis, checking in with our energy levels on a regular basis, and then we're taking the requisite steps to bring ourselves back. And we do that through a number of these strategic recovery practices. So just kind of checking in. We're going to go through some of these in just a second, but just checking in there on the chat if anybody's got any questions or any comments or any experiences. Has anybody been too overwhelmed? Has anybody been or know anybody who has not overwhelmed, sorry, burnout? Does anybody know of a kind of a story or somebody close to them who's been to that place and has first or second-hand experience of it? But hopefully kind of this is making some sense as we've been going through so far. So there's a great saying, which I'm sure many of you have heard, that when it comes to mental health and managing your own energy, it's important to fit your own oxygen masks before attending to the needs of others. Right? You need to take care of yourself. And as I said earlier, this is about resilience. It's about cultivating a culture of resilience. But you can't do that for other people unless you have the bandwidth yourself. And so we need to make sure that we're attending to our own needs first. And certainly it can feel sometimes, again, as a leader, as somebody in a position of responsibility, maybe there are feelings of guilt that you shouldn't be taking breaks, that you shouldn't be taking care of yourself. You should be absolutely all of it, all out, looking after the company, because in such a time, who are you to be taking a step back? But just to know that by pushing that approach where you're trying to maintain that high performance, trying to maintain that image of high performance, because that's ultimately what it turns out to, what it transforms into, and you move across to stress and overwhelm. If you do get to that point, first of all, you're being ineffective because you're not able to concentrate, you're not making the best judgment calls. It's taking you longer to get back on track after a setback, which is essentially resilience. And you're at risk of burnout, where you're completely taken off the table and now you can't help anybody at all. So it's this false belief that by pushing, that we're doing the very best that we can. We need to be taking care of ourselves, guilt-free, making sure that we are putting ourselves first so that we can be there and attend to the needs of others. And this isn't just physical recovery, right? This is about mental recovery as well. So there's a thing around introverts and extroverts. They say introverts, the definition of an introvert is somebody who recharges by being in their own company. And an extrovert is somebody who recharges by being in the company of others. And that's a challenge at the moment for both, because if you're an extrovert and you haven't got that physical company, you're relying on Zoom and webinars and so on. And if you're an introvert, then maybe you're having Zoom calls and WhatsApp message groups thrust at you left, right, and center. There is no time to just be by yourself, especially again if you're living in a house where you're sharing it with other people and you're trying to do homeschooling and all the rest of it. Which is, by the way, is exactly what's happening with me at the moment. I've got 3 kids, different ages, and homeschool is a nightmare. But we're getting there. I'm head of maths, you see, so I often get called in to help with times tables and fractions. But that's another story. So we need to be taking care of ourselves, and it could be the classic example here is taking breaks, and this is one of the big tools that I've really had to pull out of my toolbox here. I'm always pretty good with taking breaks, but I've had to really listen to my body and my mind and take more regular, shorter, but more regular breaks. So I might be 20, 25 minutes on a piece of work, and all of a sudden I find my head's just starting to go, and I'm starting to feel that kind of palpitations. I'm feeling kind of that crush of anxiety, and I can't shake these thoughts. And I know that, I could sit there and try and push through that. But actually, if I just stand up and I move around for 5 minutes, I've got a couple of little routines that I do, some mobility routines, some breath work that just recharges me physically, resets me mentally. If I do that for just 3 to 5 minutes and then get back to work, I just switch it back on again. Because it's not the reality. You see reality through the lens of what's going on inside your own head. And we're going to get onto that a little bit later on when we talk about your inner dialogue and some of the thoughts that you have and how to get on top of that and create an extra level of awareness. But just thinking now about what are some of the things that you could do. Is it practical for you to just stand up if you're starting to feel like that? Just managing your own levels of energy, managing your own stress, as you go through the day. Because if you just push and push and push, remember, you're going to get to stress overwhelm and you're not going to be functioning as effectively. Things like meditation, mindfulness practices, taking part in something like yoga or Tai Chi, both of which I've been experimenting with a lot more recently. Exercise, that's an absolute critical one here, just building that base level, regular exercise in, even if you're just walking around the house, if that's all you've got, doing a 10, 15, 20-minute HIIT workout at home, just doing something on a regular basis, even if you don't normally do it, so important. It's not for physical health. Yes, it will help with that, but that's not the reason why we're trying to do this and why it's so important. This is about mental performance, high performance mentally, high performance with our relationships, high performance inside our own heads. So there's many different ways that we can fit our own oxygen masks. Some take more time than others, like going out for half an hour of exercise. That takes half an hour. Some things like taking a break takes 3 minutes to do a little mobility routine. So they do take a bit of time, but think of this as your oxygen mask being fitted there. I see a chat comment coming in here. Ashley says, I did my dissertation on burnout. Yeah, you're addressing a very important topic. Great, I'd like to read that dissertation, Ashley. I did my research on a sample group of slightly over 40 people, and people get close to burnout while they're not even aware of it. Building awareness is important, absolutely. And I think this is one of the challenges that I've seen in so many of the people who I've coached. I coach a lot of sales, sales leaders, business owners, and founders and leaders as well. And one of the things that I find is that it's not quite worn as a badge of honor to be burning the candle at both ends, but it's seen as the norm for sure. Like everyone's doing it. And you kind of see everybody doing it. And so you think, well, I should be able to handle this because everybody else is. But what you don't see is what's going on in the inside. And you don't see that somebody could be presenting superficially as a super high performer and doing all the things and getting the work done, doing the hustle, all of these things here that we talk about in that upper right-hand quadrant, the high performance zone. Yet inside, they're crumbling and struggling and not enjoying, not fully experiencing their life in the way that they want to, even though on the outside it's all hunky-dory. And I've been in that situation personally where I've felt like this isn't right, and I've been again, I've brought out a lot of the strategies, talking to people about it. I've got coaches who I work things through with. I do journaling. I speak to kind of my wife and other kind of trusted friends and allies as well. So there's things that I do when I start to feel like that, but it's so common to just crush it down and, ignore it and think that it's okay, or rather that it's normal to feel like that and that everything's okay. And then all of a sudden, boom, it feels like it comes out of the blue and you've tripped over the line and you've hit burnout. Ashley, I think that's pretty much what you're saying there, that you found in your study, that people don't even realize that that's where they're at. So a big part of this, folks, is just tuning into your own sense of well-being, your own awareness, not comparing it to how other people are doing or how you think and believe that you should be doing. How are you doing? How are you doing? Like right now, check in with your mental health on a daily basis, on an hourly basis if you need to. How am I feeling? How have I been feeling? What do I need to do now to bring my best self to the next hour of work or this next meeting or this next phone call I have to make? Now, this is cultivating an inner culture of resilience. And the way that this then has an impact on the people around you is because they see that, and they see that you're not just putting words out there. You're not just saying, oh, this is what you should do. They see you living this. They hear you talking about it. It becomes the norm to have these kinds of conversations. That's how you cultivate a culture of resilience. So let's kind of crack on and talk about some of the other things here. The first one, this is an actual exercise that I want you to do. It's called the circle of control. So there's a ton of stuff that's happening that you can't do anything about, right? I hope you realize that. Like you can't, if the government, wherever your base says, right, you know what, you can't go out, you can't exercise. I think down you were saying you can go out between 6 and 9 a.m. Here in the UK. we've now got much more loosened regulations. It used to be about an hour once a day. Now we can go out multiple times a day. We can exercise with one other person outside of our immediate household. But whatever those regulations are, you can't control that. Like if you've got really restrictive lockdown conditions, you can't do anything about that. You can't control if somebody else is flouting those regulations and rules. You can't control that. But what you can do is you can allow yourself to get caught up in it and to get annoyed and frustrated and angry. And you can feel all those emotions because of these things that you can't control. Or you can draw them outside of this circle of control and say, well, look, these are things that I just can't control, and just let it go. Okay, and what I'd like you to do is you can either do it now or as an exercise, kind of, if you do a bit of journaling, this is a great journaling activity. Just draw a circle on your paper and write down outside of that circle all of the things that you can't control, all the things that could potentially harm you, that are stressful perhaps, but you can't do anything about: the spread of COVID-19, the economy, how quickly businesses will be able to come back, what's going to happen you can't control these things, but they're there. So we need to pay attention. We don't want to ignore them. This isn't Pollyanna optimism. This is about understanding, paying attention to the things that are important and that could harm us, but getting some perspective on them. We're going to talk about perspective in just a second. Because obviously, and inside the circle, we have things that we can control, and of which there are many. So we can control our self-awareness. We can control the steps that we take to look after ourselves. We can control whether we're exercising each day. We can control if we're eating a healthy diet. We can control if we're getting to bed at a reasonable time, because guess what? If you're not recovering through sleep adequately, quality and quantity of sleep, it's going to massively impact your resilience, your mental health, your physical and mental performance the next day. Your willpower battery will become gradually more and more depleted over a period of time as well, if you don't get enough sleep. But you can control that. So you might have a day, and I'm sure you've all experienced this, I know I have, where you haven't had a great night's sleep and everything just feels like a flipping nightmare the next day. And you think, oh, geez, everything's terrible. Nothing's changed, but you haven't had the kind of sleep and recovery. Maybe you've had poor nutrition as well. You had a big old curry the night before, whatever it was, right? Maybe you had a few drinks the night before and you're feeling a little bit jaded today. And that just skews your perspective. But you can control those things. You can absolutely control them. For me, one of the things I know is a challenge for me is coffee. I stopped drinking about 7 years ago. Alcohol, that is, but I started drinking coffee, a lot of it. But if I have too much of it, and by too much, I mean more than 3 cups after midday, I'm very sensitive to caffeine. If I have more than 3 cups or drink coffee after midday, it just totally disrupts my sleep and it cranks up my levels of anxiety like nobody's business. Because caffeine releases cortisol into the system. Cortisol is one of the stress hormones. You go into the sympathetic nervous system, which is fight and flight. So you're always on edge, ready to go. And again, you're looking for danger. You're looking for threat. You're looking for the things that could hurt you. And so that skews your perception of reality once again. So for me, I've got to be very mindful of caffeine. It's something I can control. It's right there in the center of my circle of influence. I can control what work I do. I can control who I surround myself with. One of the things I did when I started to find this, I transitioned from old world to kind of lockdown world fairly slickly and smoothly. There's a big change curve where you sort of no, this isn't happening. There's denial. Then you get anger and frustration. Then you get sadness and depression. And then you come out the other side and you start to thrive and integrate some of those ideas. And right, I can really get on with this and do well. I went very quickly to the thrive and integration stage of the change curve. But then around Easter time, I started to take a bit of a dip. And I started to struggle as this new reality set in. It's like, geez, how long is this going to be now? Sitting in the same place, staring at the same 4 walls, all the kind of the challenge of this new reality. And so I started to struggle. And again, so I realized that, you know, I need these principles, I need these practices, I need to really bring these things, bring all of these strategies that I'm sharing with you today, bring them to bear. So taking more breaks, reaching out to some of the people who I have in my network who always inspire me and motivate me. And I always come off calls or Zooms with them, you know, have done for years, feeling uplifted and ready and challenged and, you know, positive and recentered. But I hadn't spoken to many of them in months. So I just reached out, said, hey, look, why don't we catch up? Why don't we have a Zoom? It'd be great to speak to you. So I've been booking in 2-3 of these virtual coffees with my power network, my squad, on a weekly basis. And wow, what a difference it makes to have that injection of positivity and a different kind of frame of reference, surrounding yourself with people who lift you up. And show you that there's other ways. There's other ways of approaching things. There's other ways of seeing things. So that was one of the things that I did. And I put that, again, squarely in the center of my circle of control. So what are some of the things that are in the middle of your circle of control? I'd love to either hear about them in the chat, or, as I said, do this as a journaling exercise. It's a really positive one. Darren, thanks. Just got the message there. My mic's rubbing on my shirt. Okay, all right. I'll hold it off. So I've got a new webcam, actually. It's got a mic on that. So maybe I'll try and next time I'll use that. Okay, I want you to take a look at this image here, and tell me what you see. If you look at the two squares, you've got. See, I can see you've got one just here. It's not easy to do this. One here and one. Where is it? Here. So an A and a B. A and B. Which of those squares on the checkerboard do you think is the darker one? A or B? Again, you don't have to write in the chat, but hopefully you can see one of them looks darker than the other one, right? And we know this is an optical illusion, right? So we know that this is there's going to be some catch to this. But yeah, one of them looks darker. So A looks darker than B. But actually, if we just cover up the surrounding squares, go from there to there, all I've done is cover up the squares. You can see those squares are exactly the same shade of gray. And this is about perspective. So that's the original, and that's with them covered up. If you just Google optical illusions checkerboard, you'll see this image. It's quite a kind of a famous one. So what's happening here is that we're looking at the situation here. We're saying, oh, what's A and B? They're different shades. We're looking at it because our judgment is being clouded by what's going on all around it. And we have this negativity bias, right? So we have a bias towards looking at the things that are wrong, the things that are missing, the things that could threaten us and harm us. And for good reason. That's a good thing to have built in. But it can also harm us in the way that we see things, and we don't have that kind of balanced perspective. The reason it's a good thing to have this negativity bias is because if you imagine going back as we've evolved over the millennia, and we were traipsing around the savannah hunting for food, and we came across a big rock, and we had to go around this rock to see what was on the other side of it. You know, those of us who have ancestors who are more cautious and assumed that there was some danger around this rock, would have been very kind of cautious. Would have been just nudging around, let's have a look, see what's there, and seen the saber-toothed tiger about to, looking for something to eat, so would have backed off and would have survived. But would have survived because we assumed that there was danger around the rock. Those of us, well, there aren't any of us around who have ancestors who are less inclined towards danger, who didn't have the same negativity bias, because people in those days who didn't have that negativity bias towards danger and threat and things that could eat and harm them, they would, oh, everything will be fine, I'll just have a wander around this corner, and then they get eaten. And they don't get to then pass on their genes to the next generation. So over the millennia, over the generations, as we've evolved, those of us who have had this built-in hardwired negativity bias have survived. That's you and me. Now, that's why we still look at things and assume the worst is going to happen. Our natural tendency as human beings, maybe not you personally, but most people have a natural tendency to assume that the worst is going to happen, that there's danger around every corner, and we're every you know, if you've given a presentation before and 9 people tell you that you were a fantastic, really good presentation, and one person says, "Oh, I didn't really like your shoes," you focus on the person who didn't like your shoes, or who said, "Oh, you spoke a bit quickly." It's all you can hear, all that you focus on, because we have this negativity bias. We'll talk about filtering later on when we get into thinking traps. But what we need to do is to rebalance that, because whilst that's not healthy, it's not healthy, it's not helpful, certainly. Right now, there are no saber-toothed tigers that are going to eat us. We need to pay attention to the things that could harm us, but we don't want to have that as our only frame of reference. So we want to cover up in some ways what else is going on around there, so we can look at things and be more accurate with our thinking. This isn't just about positive thinking. And there's a misnomer here that we think about positive thinking, we have to think everything's going to be fine. That's not the case. We want to be accurate with the things that we think. Accuracy is the most important thing here. And that means taking away some of the surrounding factors that are going to sway our judgment. One really, really classic tool that we can deploy to help us rebalance our perspective of the world, of how things are sitting and what things are looking like at the moment, is gratitude. And gratitude was something that was, again, this guy here, Martin Seligman, one of the very first studies that they did around resilience back in the early 2000s was they were commissioned by the US Army to come up with a sort of a battle fit program for all 1.1 million US Army troops, both domestically and also out in combat zones around the world, like Afghanistan and Iraq. And one of the things that they did was that they brought in this practice of gratitude. Now, I'd like to think that everyone listening to this session today would regard themselves as a grateful individual. I kind of really hope that's the case. You know, I'm pretty grateful for what I've got, and we could be grateful for, you know, there's people worse off than us, and grateful for a roof over my head and food on the table and my health and so on. But actually practicing gratitude is something different. And I'll go through the steps that have been proven to have a positive impact on mental health, on happiness, on your gratitude, and also on giving you this wider perspective on things as well. So you're not just looking at for the bad stuff, you're looking at like what's accurate here, because you've got this balanced out by looking at the good stuff. Well, what they did with the US Army was they realized that those soldiers who are hunkered down in war zones, whose life was literally on the line on a daily basis, it's pretty hard to find things to be grateful for. See, what are you grateful for? My weapon, my helmet. But what they did was they said, instead of just thinking about being grateful, which still kind of sounds a little bit wishy-washy, they said, let's call it hunt the good stuff. So you have to hunt for this stuff because it might not always be immediately obvious. I think there's a real resonance with where we are at the moment, where there's so much bad stuff going on. I'm thinking, geez, I've got all these people who are, maybe you've got people in your business who are on furlough, or maybe their jobs are on the line, or maybe you're losing clients. It can feel overwhelming, and it can feel like there's no good stuff out there. But remember that this is about hunting the good stuff. The good stuff is there. You just have to work at it. You have to work harder to find it. So do this exercise with me now. It's really easy to do. And the other good thing is it feels good to do it. So we'll just do it with one thing. It works best to do last thing in the evening, just before you go to bed. And it sort of tunes your mind into a much more positive state of mind, which is great for promoting better quality sleep, and actually has the effect over the long term through what's been fairly recently discovered as neuroplasticity, being able to essentially rewire the brains. So the neural circuitry in your brain is not fixed. You can change it through repetitions, just like you can strengthen muscles in your arms and your legs by doing repetitions of arm curls and squats. You can strengthen the gratitude muscle, the positivity muscle. You can change your perspective over time by doing this on a regular basis. And all you need to do is to think of, we'll do it now for one, but 3 things that you have been grateful for over the preceding 24 hours. All right, that's all it is. So if you have a think now, back, think of one thing that's happened to you that's been a good thing over the last 24 hours. Today, yesterday. What's happened? What have you been aware of that you've been that kind of made you happy or has gone well for you? So it's the good stuff. It doesn't have to be things you're just grateful for. Maybe it was a piece of work came in that you hadn't been expecting, or maybe you did a workout that you had been putting off. That was me last night. I thought, right, I'm going to do a workout tonight because I normally train in the daytime. This made it into my gratitude log. I wasn't going to do it because I was tired in the evening. It's about 8 o'clock. I've made dinner but for 7 o'clock, and it's 8 o'clock. I'm tired. I don't want to do it. I'm just going to go and put my pajamas on and just have a relaxed evening. No, I'm committed to this. I'm going to do it. So I overcame myself and did a workout, only for half an hour, but it meant something to me because it was like casting a vote for the kind of person that I wanted to be, which is the kind of guy who does something, says he's going to do something and then does it. So I wrote that down. And as I write those things down, as you think of them now, don't just write them down. Don't just think of them in a two-dimensional way, like the words. Go back and relive that experience just for a few seconds. So now as I think about that moment where I decided, you know what, I'm just going to go and get my workout kit on. I'm going to go into the garden. I'm going to do that session. As I think about that now, I think, yeah, I feel proud. So I get to re-experience the sensation of pride. So I'm building that emotion back in. So not only did I experience that emotion there and then, I now get to re-experience that emotion a second time. And you do that with 3 things. Think about, why did that come about? For me, I think, well, that happened because I've got discipline, and I said I was going to do it, and I'd written it down, and I made it happen. What did it mean to you? For me, it meant I felt proud, I felt disciplined, I felt good about myself, and I felt great after I finished the workout as well. So kind of like bring these things to mind, jot a couple of notes down. 3 things takes about 5 minutes, not even that. But wow, what a difference it makes. And some of the studies have shown how just by doing this for even a week, just for 7 days, can make a positive impact on your mental health, your levels of anxiety, your the depressive symptoms. In fact, after 6 months of doing this, one of the earliest studies into this demonstrated a similar impact on depressive symptoms to medication for mild to moderate sufferers. So it is powerful for mental health, but also even if you're not struggling and suffering from mental health disorders at the moment, then it still brings you back up. Remember, we're looking at going from languishing in the middle here. We're looking at moving up the level here to thriving and flourishing. So practicing gratitude would be my absolute, if they one thing away from the session today, take that away, because it's super powerful. Okay, I can see okay, just looking at the questions coming in, the answers coming in there. Okay, so I want to kind of move on from this and talk about some of the what are called thinking traps, because now when we talk about positive mindset, it's a bit vague, right? Like, what is a positive mindset? Because positivity doesn't really cut it in the real world. I've just got to think positive thoughts. That isn't a practical way. It's not a useful way. And we want accuracy. We want quality thinking, not negative thinking. We don't want to dwell on worst case scenarios and all the things that we think could go wrong. We don't also want to just shut all that out and ignore it and go straight towards optimism and positivity. We want quality thinking. But to do that, we need to become much more aware of ourselves, of our thoughts. What is it that's going on in our minds that, what is that inner dialogue, that narrative that we can tune into and then challenge and change so that we do start looking at thinking, well, is that true? Is that accurate? And there's just 3 that I want to go through today. There's a bunch of about 15 or so. I've written a couple of articles on this as well, which I can point you in the direction of. In fact, I'll give you my LinkedIn contact details at the end of the session today. If anybody wants a 1-page set of notes with some additional resources and additional links and a summary of what we've covered today, then just connect with me, send me a message and ask me to send the notes, and I'll whiz them over to you. But the first one of these is catastrophizing. And, you know, I want you don't have to comment on the chat or anything, but just kind of nod along if you've ever done this before. Catastrophizing is where something happens or you think something might happen and you immediately go to the worst possible case scenario. It's like, oh my God, lockdown. I think Darren, you were talking about lockdown, like likely to go into the end of the year in some form. You know, who knows where it's going to be like in the UK, but yeah, you'd be forgiven for then going into catastrophizing mode and thinking, oh my God, the kids are going to be killing each other. I'm going to, you know, the business is going to be suffering and, oh, it's just going to be the worst. And just thinking the worst possible case scenarios. Of course, that fuels that anxiety. It fuels that negative emotion as well, that kind of sense of anticipatory loss. So we haven't lost these things yet, but boy, we're going to lose them. We're going to hurt when it happens. So let's feel all those feelings now in advance, and then we'll feel them then as well. So we allow our thinking to fuel those negative thoughts and those negative feelings and emotions, and then that emotional soup that we get mired in also then fuels thoughts. So we get in this vicious circle. So number one is to catch yourself when you're experiencing this. When you feel and when you hear yourself using the sort of the catastrophizing language, just check yourself and say, can I know that for a fact? Like, is that really true? Because we'll get caught up in the emotion and we'll use that to blur the lines of the information. It's about like looking at this grid here and we see it with, you know, we don't seeing reality. We're filtering it through the lenses within our mind's eye. We're passing it through beliefs, through maybe previous experiences, through perspectives, through other influences. And so we see this. We don't see this. We see this when we're catastrophizing. So here we are in this negative loop. And so we need to challenge and change that. So when you hear yourself, you can't do this if you don't have the self-awareness. And there are other things you can do to help enhance that. Things like journaling, meditation, mindfulness practices, committing to it through affirmations, whatever it will work for you. There are many different ways of raising that level of self-awareness. But when you do have it and you can tune into the thoughts that you're having, like listening to a radio, you thought, well, that was interesting. I'm just going to kind of rewind that a little bit and just challenge myself on that. Then you have the opportunity to change it as well. So that's the first one, catastrophizing. The second of my top three, my favorites, is mind reading. And this is where you believe you know for sure what somebody else is or must be thinking or feeling. Like you're about to give a presentation, for example, and you're thinking, oh my God, they're going to hate this, or they're going to think I'm such an idiot. Or you make a mistake and you assume everybody just thinks I'm such a dick. And you don't question it because you know it. Why would you question it? Because you know it's true, it must be true. And so then you begin to act as if. You act as if. Maybe you send a message to somebody and you're having a bit of back and forth and then it stops. And they don't get back to you. And maybe you are waiting for a response, but they haven't got back to you. Or maybe it's a piece of work and they haven't got back to you to confirm one way or the other. And so in your mind, you're thinking, oh, I must have said something to offend them, or oh my God, they must think I'm all right. They must think I'm being really pushy, or they must really hate me now. And so you act as if that's the case. Maybe you back off, you don't push it, you don't ask any more questions to follow up. And so it can affect your behavior. It's not things that are just going on in here. It's happening out there as well. And so we need to make sure that we're getting on top of this. And again, asking yourself the question, can I really know that? Because again, put your virtual hand up or nod along if you've ever mind read somebody and then been wrong. Oh, I thought you were thinking this. No, I wasn't thinking that. I just, like, my phone broke or it ran out of batteries. That's why I didn't get back to you. Oh, right, okay. I have these things going on in my mind that you must be thinking this, must be thinking that. We're nearly always wrong. We're very bad at mind reading, but it doesn't stop us trying. So when you hear yourself running those patterns in your mind reading somebody, then again, just pause, challenge yourself. Is that really true? Can I know that for a fact? And then change that thinking. What else could it be? And with the catastrophizing, just to go back to that for a second, what are some of the other potential outcomes? What are some of the things that you could take away that would be more positive from this? So the third one, just to finish off this little sequence, the last kind of piece of work, we'll kind of bring this all together. The last one of these is filtering. And I kind of touched on this earlier on when we were talking about the negativity bias, but often we do just see the worst case scenarios. We see all the negative information and we don't see the good stuff. And we do that through praise. People, I think it probably changes culturally, country to country here in the UK. I know in Ireland as well, certainly we are really bad doing this. Accepting praise. Somebody will say something, you kind of fob it off. I don't know, there's nothing, yes, but we use the but eraser liberally. Somebody will say something positive about us and we'll say, yes, but yes, but I didn't, I spoke too quickly, or yes, but my presentation wasn't as good as it could have been. And so that just completely erases everything that went before it, that somebody's just praised us about. So we filter things out. And again, that gives us a false image of ourselves. It stops us from really building this positive self-image, this robustness, this resilience, this belief in ourselves that we can overcome these setbacks. We can overcome these challenges, these difficulties. Again, just use my example from earlier about the workout that I did yesterday. It was no big deal. It's like a 30-minute workout. I've done like that sort of thing dozens of times. I've trained in the evening loads of times before. But I had to overcome myself, my inner resistance on this particular occasion to do that session. So I had to overcome something. Now, the reason I focused on that is because I can build up this story about myself, to myself, that I'm the kind of person who can overcome that inner resistance. The natural tendency will be to focus on all of those times where I didn't overcome that inner resistance. And I tell you, there have been many times where I've bailed on a session. I've come up with a reason, maybe call it an excuse if you want, to not go and do that workout. I'm a bit tired. To finish this piece of work. I just got other things I got to do. My knees are a bit niggly. And so I talk myself out of it. Now I got to pay attention to that because I need to make sure I can do things to, is that true? Is that really a valid reason for not doing a workout or not following the plan, the processes? But I don't want to focus all my attention on all those times I've quit on a workout, because then that becomes my norm. That becomes my story. Oh, I can never do this. I'm always bailing out on workouts. Now, I build up a bank of evidence by focusing my attention on the stories of the times that I have overcome my own inner resistance and I have done the workout despite not wanting to. I'm using exercise here as an example, but this stands for anything, whether it's making a challenging phone call, having a courageous conversation with somebody that you don't really want to have, but you're going to do it anyway. The more you focus on the things that you are doing well and you have done in the past, the more you start to redress this filter, this skewed perspective. Gratitude is one way of doing that, but we need to be tuning into the times that we're using this sort of filtering language. This always happens to me. I'm never able to do that. These generalizations, you just pick holes in it. Is that really true? Well, not. Okay, maybe not always. I do this with my daughter all the time. She'll say, you never let me stay up. I say, what, never? What about last night? Well, apart from last night then. It's like, you just lost. She's getting better at this now. She said, you almost never let me stay up. So, but like we do it, right? We laugh. My daughter's 12 years old, but we all do it ourselves as well. So it's got to be mindful of this. Awareness first, listen into these thinking traps and be ready to challenge and change them. So just to wrap this all up then, folks, unless there's any questions that come in as well, resilience and creating a culture of resilience and positivity starts with you, right? This has to come from you. Not only will it benefit you personally in your life, but it's also going to benefit those people immediately around you through osmosis almost. They come avail. That's the reason why I like to spend time with positive people who have these different optimistic perspectives and different approaches to life, because I get to sort of suck a little bit of that energy off them as well. And you'll give off this positive energy yourself when it's genuine and authentic, and you're not just putting on that superficial front. Because this is really important. This has to be real. This, for me, this period of time has been it's been a really special period of time for me, actually, because it's been quite struggling. Life has got quite lifey at times, but without this opportunity, I wouldn't have had the chance to really dig deep and use so many to such an intensity of my own techniques and tools that I've been sharing many of them with you today. But these aren't just things out of a book. These aren't just ideas and theories. They're practical, real world, real life, workable, actionable strategies that make a difference. Now, I'm not saying to you that practicing meditation every day, doing a gratitude journal every night, and getting all your exercise and sleep and nutrition on point. I'm not saying you have to do all of those things the exact same way that I do in order to get results, to maintain your we want to be staying up here in this top right hand quadrant, remember, the high performance quadrant. I'm not saying you have to do all of those things, but you have the opportunity here to experiment, to find things that do work for you. You probably already know most of them. You're just not doing them consistently enough at the moment, and you find yourself going over to stress and overwhelm. So first step is to take care of yourself first. Fit your own oxygen mask first, and then attend to the needs of others. And when it comes to building and creating a culture of resilience, then to share these ideas, these practices with others as well. To bring things like thinking traps and negativity bias and resilience and recovery and high performance and stress and overwhelm and burnout and strategic recovery. Bring these thoughts, these ideas into just the natural kind of everyday parlance within the organization, within your business, within your team. So people are aware that this is just how we do things around here. But that's what culture is. It's not just a one hit, let's write a culture statement and then move on. It's about how you live your life, how the business operates, how you operate within your own personal culture. And this all needs to be in alignment. Resilience isn't something that is just an add-on. We all need it. Companies need it. Individuals need it. And we all have it to some extent. But this is about how to not just do it ad hoc by chance. How do you systematically build on it? How do you work this into your daily routines such that it becomes an integral part of the fabric of your life, and it's constantly there in the back and or the front of your mind as well? So if you want to connect with me, and I hope that some of you do, then just go over to LinkedIn/in/Coach George Anderson. And what I'll do is if you connect with me and then send me a message, I will send you over a one-page set of notes off based, as I said, on what we've covered today, and also a couple of other resources, as well as some books you might find interesting, a couple of links, a couple of videos that you might also find useful. And then if you want to find out more about some of the work that I've been doing with organizations such as Talent in the Cloud and other organizations as well, around, I've got a series of webinars a bit like this around stress management, around resilience and mindsets, around physical well-being strategies, habit formation, and all of those good things that are going to be so important, not just now, but kind of well into the future as well. If any of that sounds like something you want to find out more about, then again, just through LinkedIn or through Darren, if you prefer, just drop me a line and I'll be more than happy to have a conversation with you. Darren.
George, thank you so much. And listen, I'm testament, right? I mean, I'm not going to, I think, go through or tell the audience where I was when we first started to where I am now. That's probably a bit personal for this session, but I've certainly come a long way. And I think one of the key things, one of the key takeaways is about consistency, right? It's doing something small, making a slight improvement on something or a number of things over a consistent period. And I know from sort of positive thinking, and you're right in what you said, George. There's a lot of people that harp on about positive mental attitude, but what does that actually mean, and how do you actually get into that sort of mindset? And I think this whole series that we've put together, as I said, this is the final one, has been about just trying to change the narrative from being doom and gloom to actually, this is an opportunity. This is an opportune moment, probably one that a lot of us in business may never get again, to actually take some time back and go, let's just look at our businesses, let's look at our strategies, let's look at our people, let's look at everything just with slightly different pressures. I'm not going to say less pressure, but slightly different pressures, and adjust and be able to perhaps be a bit more agile in terms of how we approach things. So George, listen, thank you. I really appreciate your time. Thank you for talking to our community. As I said, we'll be emailing this a copy of this recording out to everyone who has attended and who couldn't join live. It will be on our website as well. And it was a great way to cap off what's been, I think, a really inspiring series. And again, George, you've been great as always, and look forward to seeing you again. And some of your videos, maybe one day I'll take you up on a marathon run, but yeah, we'll have to do that virtually, right?
One day soon, hopefully. Nice one. Cheers, Darren.
Thanks so much. Cheers, everyone. Take care.
Bye for now.
Bye.